Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining me for 10 Minute Tuesdays. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. And I have a friend Mary on here. Mary, what's going on?
Hi, CQ. Lovely to see you.
Thank you for taking time out to hop on this. All right, 10 Minute Tuesday, we've done this before, so let's go ahead and hop into it. Mary, introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. I'm Mary Amanuel. I am one of the co-founders of the NHS Python Community. That's the National Health Service in England. I'm one of the co-founders of the Python community with three other colleagues. And apart from that, I work in data analytics and data science.
Awesome. So understanding that, co-founder, working data analytics and data science, you had to get your start somewhere. So what really, compelled you to get into data to begin with?
Well, it was really interesting because I went straight from school, so like high school, straight into work. There was no sort of university track initially for me. So I was very plunged into the deep end in this industry. And actually my first job straight out of school, full-time job, was in marketing. And I realized, there's so much data being collected on people around their interests, around what their habits online. And back in those days I was using a lot of Excel, and I realized there was the data guys and the sort of the other department that I think everyone was a bit intimidated by, but they were doing like really interesting work with dashboards and insight. And I never wanted to feel like I couldn't do something, so I started to sort of try and help them out with projects and learn a lot. And I think what I realized is that data is very powerful and can be used to help people when it's used, correctly in a way that informs insights. So I was like, you know what, I want to use data to help people and to help society. So I found an apprenticeship at the NHS, a data apprenticeship, when I was a teenager, actually. And yeah, that's how I started.
That's incredible, and that's quite the journey as well, too. To start there, and then where you're at now. So that's really incredible that you had go that through that process. So with that in mind, right, you started right out of high school, and then you're at where you're at, and at a high level, very competent, but along the path. I'm sure there were some bumps and bruises. So, what would you consider your biggest failure? Quotation marks around failure. And what did you learn from that experience?
I think I would say there is a tendency in this industry to compare yourself a lot with others and to feel always like behind. And that is completely fine because I mean, everything's accelerating at such a fast pace all of the time. And there are always people with more qualifications than you. And especially me being always the youngest in the department and technically the least qualified on paper, you kind of like I did feel sometimes intimidated, like, oh, what can I do? But what I learned from that was you need to realize how to like you need to know how to differentiate yourself within your team. And um being a good data scientist is not just about technical skills, it's about your ability to see links with other disciplines, your ability to communicate, your ability to translate what is interesting and impactful about your work. It's not just about the technical. So I learned to look at things in data science, to look at what, not just what's happening, but the trends that will last in the long term, and to focus on trying to be competent at those, but also, trying to find your niche within what is the intersection between you and data science, what makes you unique in this field as well. So yeah, that's what I learned.
I love it. I love it. That's really fantastic. And I think a follow up question to that would be: you mentioned earlier that everything is growing at such a fast pace. It's like so much information to consume, and there's just you kind of have like this internal feeling like I'm not caught up or what have you. What's your process for keeping current with current events in the industry?
That's a great question. So, you know, I've asked my colleagues this a lot as well. And I remember one of my colleagues, Dan, said, just look at what's going to last, not now, but in 5, 10 years' time, what is going to last. And you're always going to need SQL skills. You're always going to need skills that um, are foundational skills, skills on the basics. And, maybe some of the trends might change and things like that, but that is something that, you have to always have a good hand on the fundamentals. I think less like more important than the tools are the problems. So what are the problems that are the most important to solve in the next 10 to 20 years? What are the problems that I'm personally interested in tackling that are going to also help a lot of other people? So yeah, less about tools, more about the problems that will persist, the trends that will last longer than just the current time, and trying to leverage what you can from these new technologies like ChatGPT, Claude, um, Bard. How can you use that to optimize your life? And what do you think, what kind of added value can knowing about these things, large language models, help you in your own practice? So I think you have to be kind of selective, and there's sort of selective awareness, because there is so much out there. I'm sure you could agree that it's just AI on the news all the time, every day,
Non-stop.
non-stop. And it can be a headache sometimes. But you have to see, okay, what is really groundbreaking here, and what should I really invest time into learning about?
I love that. I love that. And I guess one more question in that regard, and just understand that like that's your process, really being impactful. And next 5 to 10 years, how can I help humanity and the next person? Is that helping the next person? Is that kind of like a core value of yours of how can you use your craft to help the next person to, whatever it is that they need help with?
Yes, I definitely, that's my driving force, because, you know, like when we made the NHS Python community, we didn't have an understanding that it would help so many people. So the NHS Python community is a community of practice that supports, I think, over 1,000 people now in the NHS and wider healthcare sector. And these are a mixture of clinicians, so people who work with patients, data scientists, developers, um, that want to get into programming, that use Python, the programming language, that want to do open coding to make sure coding is shared. And I think when we founded the Python community, we weren't aware that it would have as much impact as it's had. And I remember a colleague of mine saying, if it helps one person, then we've done the right thing. And I think what we learned was that you can make very simple things, very, very simple things. They don't have to be huge, significant things. It can be very simple things, but they can save a lot of time and stress for people. And that in itself is a big impact. So small scale, really simple projects can have big rewards because a lot of people don't have time to do them. So I think, yeah, just helping the next person, helping anyone I can is my driving force since I was a kid. And yeah, that's who I am.
I
That's who I
love it.
am, CQ.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. That's so great. All right. So, what is one piece of advice you give someone who's just starting out in their career?
One piece of advice I would give to someone just starting out their career is, I'm trying to not make it cliche, but there is so much pseudo complexity sometimes with getting started with data analysis, data science. Like data science is, complex field and also complicated. And, you do need to know quite a few things about different subjects. But I'm not sure. A lot of people say, okay, what is the first step? And there is such added value to having a basic competency in a programming language like Python, that I would say that it's probably very, very good skill to invest some time in. So I would say the classic analyst in the NHS organization is someone who knows how to use Excel and SQL. But if you have someone who also knows a bit about Python, the added value to that team that's not really used to using programming languages is huge. And what you have is you have something that differentiates you in the team, helps you teach others in the team, and it helps your team do things that they haven't been able to do before. So I would say focus on the basics of something like Python programming language, focus on, being able to use libraries like pandas, we're focusing on the basics. And even with that, you can leverage it for your whole career. So it's not just the complex things that will get you far. It's actually the basics done, but the basic things done very well that will, I think, get you far in the long term, actually.
That's really fantastic because I've definitely been a product of it myself, but then I've interacted with people where they go for like the most complex problem when they're first starting out. It's like, no, let's, take a few steps back. Let's get the foundations and the fundamentals and the expertise right. And then you build upon that. And then you just stack upon, good habits, good practices, and so on and so forth.
Exactly. And I think also to add to that, a lot of the reasons why I've got a lot of personal value out of my data science career is building things with other people. I think an analytical career can feel quite insulated and quite, stuck in one specific project, one specific team problem for a long time. And I think a lot of the most impactful thing I've done is actually, you know, working with others in things outside of my core problem. And that is, for me, a much more effective way of networking. I think a lot of people see networking as like standing in a room, hi, how are you? What do you do? And things like that. But building things together is probably my favorite way to network with people. It builds such a sense of community. And so, I would encourage people to look at others in your team or in your environment outside of your team and say, what's something that you're working on? How can I use my skills to help you? How can maybe we can work together and let's build something together. And the more you think outside of data science, the better, I think. The more you think about how do you translate what you're doing to others, the more impactful I think it will be.
Wow, that's awesome, and Jim, and some advice I'm going to take on myself. So I appreciate that one for me. So that was really great. All right, Mary, where can listeners find you at online?
So you can find me on LinkedIn mostly. Yeah, and my website's on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mary. I appreciate it. This was a great episode. Definitely one of my favorite ones. I appreciate you taking time out.
That's so sweet. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah, no
Pleasure.
problem. No problem. And thanks everybody for watching. And like I said in the beginning, if you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll talk to you all next week. Y'all have a great day.